So today I just wanted to take a quick look at the 2017 direct-to-video release Mother Krampus. I'm not going to lie, this was a very disappointing film because to me the cover art of this it wasn't the best cover art, but it looked interesting, and in my mind I thought, well, you know, this potentially could be an interesting film, so I wanted to give it a chance. So I checked it out, and it is supposedly based on the mythology of Frau Percher, who I assume was a child eater. It's hinted at in the film, and the creature herself does feast upon flesh. So I am definitely leaning towards cannibal. She is obviously not a Krampus creature at all. That was just more of a title given to the film to cash in on the recent pop culture Krampus craze that has been going on right now, which I would say, yes, was definitely a very effective marketing ploy, because the only reason I paid this film any mind was because the name Krampus was actually in the title. I'm not going to lie to you, but the film does have two alternate titles. It is also known as The 12 Deaths of Christmas, as well as The Curse of Frau Percha. So honestly, if they had kept either of the original titles, I do not think as many people would have paid the film any mind. Myself, for sure, especially the cover art, it definitely would have been different, less Christmassy looking, I'm assuming. But with a title like The 12 Deaths of Christmas, I don't think I would have watched it. Maybe not. I would have expected something more along Faces of Death if it had a title like that. But unfortunately, they just don't make movies like that anymore. Actually, they haven't made movies like that in a long time. But getting back to this very watered down, horrible film, you do have the intro sequence, or you do have kind of like this booming narrator's voice. They're just kind of telling you the legend or the myth of Frau Percher. And upon my first watch of this film, I thought, okay, well, we've got potential here. It's a decent start. But honestly, I never really make it past the 40-minute mark of this film. Usually by that time, which is when we're getting down to the whole nitty-gritty of the film, where the bulk of the action takes place, I've pretty much lost interest, and I'm bored, and I'm just ready for the movie to go away. And I usually fall asleep during this part of the film, but the beginning sequence, I mean, they do have a bit of a subplot. They are trying to present a story. It is a low-budget film, so you do have some limited effects. Another one of the things that just kind of bothered me, I guess, why I wish the film didn't have the animated or drawn-on artwork that it has. If it had just had more of a film still or something more realistic or presentable, I potentially would have found the Frau Percher character less disappointing, because on the back cover of the film you have this long red dramatic gown. It's more of a historical piece-looking dress, and you have that big red draping cape, the hooded cape. The film itself, she does wear a dress and cape, but it's just a very dull black costume. There really isn't much to it. The character or the makeup itself is just very sloppy. You have a bit of black that has been painted onto the teeth to either make her teeth look worn down or serrated, I guess you could say, but the makeup is very heavily caked on. I want to say it's grease paint just by the way it looks. You also have very heavily drawn on black eye paint, but looking at the character, it doesn't look like there's much of a presentation there. I mean, if they had taken more care into stylizing her makeup, I possibly would have just given her a pass, but upon getting a close-up of her, I was like, ugh, no. You know, I'm aware my makeup skills aren't that great, but I make an effort. But I see the character's makeup and I just think, blah. That's just my opinion, though, of course. But we have the opening scene of this film. You have a woman who is talking to a pastor, I would assume, and a little boy turns around, he looks down, and there are a trail of little butterscotch hard candy. So he follows this little trail of candy until he finds a whole bulk or pile of candy at the doorway of the church. The little boy asks the woman figure, who we really don't see at that time yet, if she has any more candy. And I'm thinking to myself, you greedy little squirrel, look at everything you have and you're asking for more. So he is essentially snatched, goes missing. The following child snatching scene actually takes place in a school inside of a tarp, or I guess you could say a see-through-ish plastic tent inside of a school classroom. They are two boys that have been pulled after school for detention, and for some odd reason she's hiding in the tent. One of the goofy boys goes over, he once again gets snatched or pulled in, and that's the last we ever see or hear of him. So those are the first two child snatchings that we see within the film without actually seeing this Frau character. So it's roughly 30 minutes into the film that we actually witness our first murder. There is a babysitter who is looking after a young girl, and she basically pulls this nonsense with the babysitter. You know, if you don't show me a good time, I'm going to tell my parents that you had a boy over and you did all of this nonsense and blah blah blah, basically blackmailing her babysitter. But the young woman decides to tell her a scary story, which is, of course, the story of Frau Percher. For some odd reason, she combines it with the tale of Bloody Mary, in which you have to stand in front of a mirror and call the witch. The little girl responds by saying, "That's Candyman," which I thought was very funny. But they go ahead and they do this mirror deal, and of course, the witch shows up. She essentially, I guess you could say, guts or eviscerates the babysitter, stuffs her full of string lights, and hangs her on the front of the little girl's home. So of course the babysitter's boyfriend gets to see that as a Christmas gift. But that is pretty much the first kill scene we witness. From there we actually move into the actual meat of the story, which is a family who is on the verge of divorce at holiday. You have a young mother who is avoiding telling her daughter that the reason that mom and pop are separated basically is because dad ran off with a younger woman. You know how it goes. You get to a certain age and somebody has a crisis and they want to trade someone in for a younger model. So that's basically what has happened here, and chubby little daughter cannot comprehend this with her child mind. All she understands is her selfish need to have her parents together. So she calls the father behind the mother's back, invites him over to Christmas dinner, lies, says that the mother has extended this invitation, and of course the horse's rear brings the mistress over with him, so of course that goes over extremely well. And then we come into the murder sequence of the film, which is pretty much where I knock off and fall asleep. But we also have this whole subplot entangled in here that Grandma and Grandpa had blamed murders, child murders, on someone else years ago. Someone was falsely killed, but it was actually Grandma who was responsible, and the grandfather covered this up. So supposedly this Frau Percher ghost woman thing, whatever, is wanting to take vengeance upon the family and anyone else who was responsible for her death because of this. So that's basically the plot of the story. I haven't really given too many ins and outs, but honestly the film was so bad I do not feel terrible at all about blowing the entire film if it will prevent you from watching it. But it's really not that great. The acting is decent. You do have actors that have had practice, they've acquired some skill, so they are believable. The dialogue is a bit here and there, but overall it's just the weak story that just really does not hold my interest, which is really kind of sad because, as I've said, I know the cover art isn't all that, but I really wanted to like this movie, and to some degree it kind of reminds me of those early days of VHS where you would have like this really awesome cover art on a movie. Once again, I know the cover of this movie is not that great, but to some degree, you know, that's how an audience would be drawn in, especially for a low budget or lesser known film. You would put something really cool on the cover and people would be, ooh, I want to see that. So that was the effect that this had with me, was I want to see that. No, I didn't. I really didn't. Apparently I fell asleep twice. But I want to say that this film did have potential. It could have been written better. The actors did do a good job, so I'm not knocking them, but it's not the best film. If you have to see it, go for it. Once again, if you're a Krampus enthusiast, then have at it. But I would say bring your group with you and just be ready to just rip on this film and just make fun of it throughout the entire movie, because that is the only way that you can make this an enjoyable watch. But that is all I have for you guys today, and I will talk to you later.